Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyil ameen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin amma ba'd. Distinguished guests, honorable lecturers, professionals, my dear brothers and sisters, نادي الاقتصاد الإسلامي بجامعة الكويت Islamic Economics Association of the Faculty of Sharia and Islamic Studies, Kuwait University, is glad to welcome you all to this special session, today's session on the role of Islamic economics in preventing economic and financial crisis. Today, our speaker is Dr. ANWAR MISBAH SOUBRA, who will be discussing the topic of the role of Islamic economics in preventing economic and financial crisis. As you know, Dr. ANWAR MISBAH is a scholar in Islamic studies, Islamic economics and finance, and who is also ex-head of Sharia compliance in Bahrain and Oman, and currently is a lecturer on these topics in Beirut Islamic University, graduate level, and supervisor of master's and PhD thesis on Islamic finance topics. A part of our programs and events, this topic is very important for the professionals in this field and also students, researchers in this field of Islamic banking and finance. So we believe that all participants will benefit from this session, inshallah. So now, without further ado, let me invite Dr. ANWAR MISBAH SOUBRA to begin the session. Please welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I appreciate the attendance of all the participants in this event. My intention is to provide an outlook on the possibilities of preventing this recurring economic and financial crisis that every other year we have a certain crisis in a country or in the world. And we claim to say that if the proper Islamic economics paradigm is applied, then these crises should not happen. Or if they happen, then the implications will be very mild and will not have these super effects globally. That is. In this event, I will concentrate on three basic items, three basic levels. The first is presenting just the essential principles on the Islamic economics as a paradigm. What is the thought that we present there? And then what happened in the economic thought globally after the 2008 financial crisis, and then what are the actions that were taken, especially by the Federal Reserve after that crash in 2008, to stop and to remedy the effects of this crisis. And we are going to see how Islamic economics, or from a financial standpoint or from an economic standpoint, comes into the picture by itself when the remedy is presented by conventional non-Muslim scholars, especially if you're talking about the United States. Therefore, here, I will start by saying that, yes, we do have a complete set of a paradigm, because the question is, do we have, in fact, an Islamic economics as a theory, as a complete theory? And we are always contested with this question. And I intended to say that, yes, we do have a theory. And if you look over through the lectures and, sorry, the books, the literature that is written on Islamic economics, you will find that scholars have written a vast number of books, some of them that concentrate on a certain topic in economics. Some of them are very comprehensive. But yes, we do have an economic theory, although it has already been written in the books of Islamic jurisprudence for 1,000 years ago. This thought, which is based on Islamic bases, have been collected and they have been represented as a full theory. And yes, it does exist. It's not imaginary. Now I will go through this and we will see how it will come about. And I hope that we will have a discussion on this rather than a one-sided lecture. Therefore, I'll try to be I'll not say as fast, but I would like to reduce my part in the beginning to the minimum possible time so that we can have the discussions if some of the participants are interested in discussing. Okay. The first element that I would like to say to start here. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Therefore, I'll start here by saying that the human intellect, as I put here in the title, we are always faced with new developments in economic thought, since this is our major topic. And it's not true when you say that this is the maximum top possible level or ceiling that the human thought has ever arrived at, as you have in the theory that was presented, that the capitalist liberal economic thought is the top and cannot be exceeded by human intellectual capacity. This is not true. As long as we have our intellect working, then this means that we will always be presenting somewhere in the world. Somebody will come up with a new idea in economics, and we will have development in this thought, and it's not static. Okay, we are not talking about physics or chemistry where you have a consistent type of a reaction. This is an intellectual experiment which will continue to propagate, and it will not stop at any level. However, due to this, it means that whenever we have new economic theory, whenever you have a new mode of thought, then this will be tested. Is this thought, is it true or is it wrong? Is it good or is it bad? What are the implications? What are the repercussions? We will only know that after implementation. And based on trial and error, the plan will change and it's subject to modification. This has been the trend all through the human history. However, we claim to say that as Muslims, we say that Islam will present solutions to all our problems, including financial and economic problems. Why? Because it comes from a divine position, and definitely it's always true. It's not erroneous, and it's fixed, and whenever it is applied, it will give us the proper results as it's supposed to be, to the benefit of mankind all over. Therefore, it's not subject to trial and error. And this has been tested for hundreds of years during the governance years of Islamic states throughout the world. Therefore, we're not talking only about theory, it has been applied, but the proper, what I can say here is that whatever economic thought develops or evolves, finally it has to emerge and converge towards what Sharia has said. The Islamic economic paradigm will always prevail, and whatever human thought comes up in the future, it has to diverge to what the Islamic Sharia and economics has said, because it is the ultimate truth. Simple as that. And now we can show from the example when we come to the crash of the financial markets in 2008. Okay, therefore, now to follow on this first idea, we say Islamic economics just from a perspective that we are putting our vision to it. Economics is not ours only as Muslims. It's not Islamic chemistry or Islamic physics, or this is a human science. Therefore, we have economics from an Islamic perspective and economics from a capitalist perspective, actually. So nobody monopolizes this theory or this thought, because all economic thought discuss the same items. Therefore, you discuss production, consumption, redistribution of wealth, pricing, profit, the role of government. Therefore, all the topics that you can think of that are proposed in economics, each type of intellectual theory has its own perspective, whether you're talking capitalist, socialist, communist, and Islam. Therefore, it's not our economics. Therefore, if we say Islamic economics, it's just that it's a shorter type of saying economics from an Islamic perspective. So we make it short by saying Islamic economics. This is the concept here.
Excuse me, Doctor. Will you share the slides, or?
Sorry?
Will you share the slides?
Sorry, I didn't. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Or if there's a problem. Oh, yes. Now it's visible.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But you need to make it a little bit bigger. Yeah. I think, yes, it's perfect, Doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
done. It's done. No problem. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay. May Allah bless you, Doctor. Barakallah fiqh.
Therefore, here, what we are saying that each type of economic thought will share its own perspective. And these perspectives now doesn't mean that this is the economics that each nation has its own economics. We all discuss the same issues, and each type of civilization has its own approach to that. Whether we converge or we diverge, this is the normal path of human intellectual efforts. Therefore, all these principles, axioms, guidelines, whatever we have in economic thought, they will carry around implications, whether it is positive or it is negative. Therefore, if we refer to that the problem is the interest rate, or the problem is that we have budget deficit, or the problem is high imports, whatever the economic problem is, then an economist will present his side of the solution, and it will be applied. What will be the repercussions, what will be the implications, it will only be known after this new policy is applied. And if it comes out that it hasn't done anything, then they will move into a different type of a solution. This is why I said it's based on trial and error. From an Islamic perspective, I said that it has a solid foundation, because it cannot be wrong. So when the ayah says, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا, therefore it means that any interest-based type of transaction is not permitted. Therefore, if you know what are the implications or not, if you know what are the reasons or not, we have to abide by it. And the result will definitely be to our benefit. Why? Because Allah will only provide us with these guidelines that will benefit us. Whether we understand what's the wisdom or not, and we are supposed to know, but even if we don't know, we have to apply. And when we apply it, we will see the good results coming out of it, and then definitely it will be a fixed application for all generations all through, and will always give the positive results that is supposed to be done. Okay. And therefore, the Islamic perspective is not based on our own human selection. Okay, it's based on divine instructions, not necessarily in all its aspects, but as I said, we have the principles, the axioms, and the guidelines, and where we have the details for us, we can always throw them and go through the intellectual process of providing details. Now, in the economic policy as a whole, as it is known that we have three types of policies in any state: the economic policy, the fiscal policy, and the monetary policy. And in Islam, from Islamic Sharia, we have the guidelines for all these types of policies, whether it is specific as a principle or whether it is detailed for applications and steps for application. Where we have details, then this is good. If we have only principles, then it means we have to develop these steps of execution as we go through to prepare the full theory and then apply it. Now, is it? We have to come to face the truth and make a differentiation between 2 points here. Is it applicable, or is it always a theory? Now, I said in history it has been applied for several years, hundreds of years, and we have many instances where success has been shown by applying these principles that stemmed from Islamic Sharia. Now, currently, in this era where we live, we have to know that applying economics from an Islamic perspective is a political issue. Why? Because you need rules and regulations that are decided upon in the political, official, regulatory institutions, like a parliament, a government, the president, the emir, whoever is at the top of the authority. Then they have to issue these rules and regulations at the official institutions, and they have to decide. Therefore, if you have a decision on interest-based banking, what can you do? It becomes a matter of fact. Therefore, on the macro level, this is where the government comes in, and deciding on the economic type of policies and paradigm that has to be used becomes a political decision. As individuals, on the micro level, we can use that. We can actually apply economics and finance from an Islamic perspective by our own choice. For instance, very simply speaking, I can choose not to open an account in an interest-based bank. This is my choice. And if I have an Islamic bank in my country, and the government cannot force me to choose which bank to open an account with, I can choose not to deal with interest. I can choose to abide only by the permitted type of contracts. As you know, we have so many types of contracts that are not permitted from a Sharia perspective. Therefore, if I own a company, if I own my own business, if I have my personal type of financial and economic dealings, then I can decide to apply Sharia permitted transactions. Therefore, on the micro level, whether it's individual or it is business, it is my decision. On the macro level, it's not mine. Therefore, this is where we have the contradictory type of life, a dual life, where as an individual Muslim, I would like to abide by the Sharia permitted transaction, but on the macro level, it's a different story. Therefore, we have to live by that until the government finally sees that what is the best to be applied for the country as a whole, and then, but this process takes a very long time. And it is a political decision. This is why it becomes more difficult. Therefore, when it comes to theory versus implementation, it says yes, always we are faced with this dilemma by saying, but Islamic economics, please point to me, where is Islamic economics? Where can I find it? Which country applies it? We don't see it. Therefore, how can we apply something which is not practiced? We don't know if it works or it doesn't. Therefore, yes, this is a dilemma, in fact, and it's not in the reach of our hands to make it happen. But we have to live. We have to live by it, and it needs a lot of time to be applied. Introducing Islamic banks, at least, is one point where it's a step forward. Let's hope that more steps can become more speedy. Okay. Therefore, why we cannot have implementation if the theory exists? Okay. Because it is a political decision, this is the conflict. And I don't want to talk of politics here, just to make a simple idea here, that in globally where we live now, globally we have a center point, which is the capitalist liberal type of economics, and all other countries are floating around, right? And it has this big magnet, and we have to follow. Therefore, we are not leaders, but we are followers. And since we are followers, and it's like this center or pole is the sun, and then all other planets are roaming around, orbiting around this center. Therefore, we cannot escape this gravitational force, and we have to abide by the rules of the pole or the center. And we are followers. If you need, or if you want, in fact, we need, yes, we need. But do we want? Maybe we want. Do we have the capability? Do we have the will? If we do, then it means you have to break through from this gravity of the center, have a high degree of independence, and then take our own decisions and say that we don't want to apply the economic paradigm of the center. We have our own economic paradigm to apply, and we have to split independent from. This is a very huge step, which is a political decision. If done, it will have its own repercussions. But otherwise, if it doesn't take place, this means that applying Islamic paradigm in a certain country will not happen. It's very remote. Okay. Now we will see, I will arrive at a point where you can see that this capitalist liberal system, they will apply Sharia without us saying anything. The core of the Islamic economic paradigm, it includes a high level of ethical and moral substance, because usually the first question that students will say at any business school, they will say, what's the link between religion and business? Business is something, religion is something else. In fact, it's not. If you are talking about this from an Islamic perspective, ethics and moral substance comes from the religion, and also our business transactions have their stem in religion, and they are intermingled, and you cannot split them. You cannot have a business transaction without having an ethical model and a moral substance. You cannot split it. It's all mixed in. And if you look through into Islamic Sharia, you will find that all these transactions are very linked with ethical standards. I will give you just a simple example, not to go through very vastly. If somebody gives you a check and it bounces back, then legally you are permitted to present it to the police, and then this person will be taken to prison until he pays his debt. And so it's a financial crime. But from an Islamic Sharia perspective, it says, no, if this guy is really in a hardship, in a financial hardship, then what we do? Therefore, you give him some time, a lapse of time, until he's able to pay. And he is not able to pay. What happens? Then you just forgive him and make this amount of the check as a donation. Therefore, from an Islamic perspective, Sharia tries to elevate us to higher moral standards. Although legally, you are, in fact, as an individual, as the beneficiary from this check, you are permitted to go to take legal action and put this person in prison. Therefore, you can see where the ethical standards and the moral substance come into these types of transaction, and we have hundreds of examples that we can exhibit from Sharia regarding this link between moral and transaction together. While if you go to the capital liberal system that we are living now, it's only on the legal side, financial side, not on the ethical or the moral and the moral substance. Although all business schools, they teach business ethics, but it's always in books. Okay, a basic ethical standard implies rejection of the prevailing proverb. You say that achieving an objective justifies the means. From an Islamic perspective, this is not true. If you have a good objective, it means you need to arrive at it by good means. Therefore, it's not permitted that you do anything to achieve your objective. Even if it's a good objective, you have to achieve it by good means. This is where the ethical and the moral substance come into practice while executing our transaction. Okay. Now, what are these principles? The first essential item, wherever you look in Sharia, any type of transaction, any type of human relationship, you will find prime element of justice. This is ultimate prime, justice. You have to achieve justice. In our financial transaction, our economic theory, justice will be at the top, number one principle. Therefore, and we have to produce economic value-added activities of products and services needed by society. What does that mean? Sorry. This is the difference between a solid economy that produces goods and services which are needed by society and not a bubble economy. You can produce anything, or you can just generate additional revenues without producing anything. This means it becomes only a financial transaction where you don't have production of goods and services. This generates a bubble. To give you an example, in the financial crisis in 2008, the global GDP was $88 trillion, an estimate of total global GDP. The value of trading in the New York Stock Exchange by itself was something like $269 trillion. Therefore, if you say that trading is buying and selling, if total GDP is 88 and the total trading is 269, what are we trading? What is the difference? This is the size of the bubble. If you add to it financial derivatives, then the total trading number becomes $620 something trillion. Therefore, the real GDP is 88. What is the difference between 88, 260, 600 something trillions of dollars? This is why you have, in the first couple of hours, overnight, you had a total loss of something like $2 trillion. And over the week, it was $7 or $8 trillion that the US government has to subsidize and pay out to cover these losses. From an Islamic perspective, we always have an economic value-added activity. You don't operate in a bubble. We operate on solid ground with economic activity, and every element of cash that you spend is the counter effect will be an additional production with a value-added transaction, which means you have an increment in the products and services. Not any products and services. We put a priority to that these products and services are needed by society. If these products and services are not needed by society, it means that you are putting your financial sources somewhere which are not needed. Therefore, you are wasting time, money, and effort. Therefore, this is how we present our economic theory, that It is based on economic value-added activities. And if you refer to Islamic banking, you look at the asset side, what do you have? It's all based on actual economic type of activities, such as, if you look at all the sales type of transactions, murabaha, salam, istisna, you're talking about financing acquisition of assets. If you are talking about musharaka, mudaraba, or investment agency, what are you talking about? You are having here equity participation to produce in the future these types of assets. Or we are talking about ijara. Also, ijara is an asset-based type of financing. Therefore, you cannot go into an Islamic bank and say, please, I need to borrow something like 100,000. They will never lend you. In an Islamic bank, you don't give out cash. We deal directly with assets, whatever the type of financing is relevant here. Therefore, it's every amount of financing given out by an Islamic bank, the counter value is an economic value added activity. Therefore, you don't have pumping of liquidity in the market, and therefore you do not participate in generating inflation. Because the simple definition of inflation, where you have a high volume of liquidity not matched by an increase in the products and services. Therefore, you have so much money, but little amounts of products and services. Therefore, we are all competing with this cash to buy these goods and services. And what happens is this tends to elevate and increase their prices. Therefore, if you go to an Islamic-based type of financing, you don't have this problem. And it's always economic-based. You always have products and services, and you do not generate this type of inflation. Therefore, the third principle is social solidarity. You cannot say that if somebody is underprivileged and they do not generate enough revenues, then I don't care. It's not my problem. Let the government take care of it. Yes, the government is responsible, but as a Muslim, I have a part here because we live as a nation. As a Muslim is the brother of the other Muslim, and if he has a problem, I have it's my duty. I have the duty to help, and this is directly related to zakat and other donations. Therefore, whenever I arrive at the level where my own necessities have been achieved, then now comes the time where I have to participate in achieving the necessities of another human being. Therefore, if somebody for a reason does not produce and does not generate, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't care. It's not my problem. No, we have to participate, and it is in fact our role, individual role, to do something regarding that. And actually, if we apply Sharia, then this is reflected in the brotherhood of mankind. God has created this world and made its wealth so much distributed all over the world. This country has oil, the other country has cocoa, the third country has wheat, the other has corn. You don't have everything everywhere. Therefore, it is to our general interest to cooperate. And this will only have its proper results if this comes in good faith and good relationships, not by war. You cannot take my oil by war. You occupy my country and then you take my oil. I occupy your country and take your coal or your iron or your uranium. This doesn't happen that way. Maybe it does happen that way. It shouldn't happen this way. This is why we say we are now, if I need your corn for today, maybe for the years to come, you will need some product that I produce. Then it is to the benefit of each nation and country that you have good relation with your neighbor, even with your far countries, if they are not our neighbors, because there will come a point in time where I will need what you produce. Therefore, we need to be in good relation. And brotherhood, why brotherhood? Because we are all the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, definitely. Even if you take it in the moral sense, then yes, as human beings, we have to realize that we need each other. Whenever time passes, then changes take place. and then now you need me. In the future, I will need you. Therefore, I have to be in good relations with you so that we can trade. This is a major issue here in international trade. Therefore, this is the principle of brotherhood of mankind. Now, if we try to apply a simple example here, where from an Islamic perspective, how do I, as an individual Muslim, how do I apply these Sharia axioms into my own action? Something like consumption, for instance. If I consume, everybody consumes daily, several times of products and services. In the capitalist economic theory, we say maximization of satisfaction and maximization of utility. From an Islamic perspective, it's not maximization of satisfaction, right? It's arriving at the sustenance level. Therefore, if you go in a restaurant, to a restaurant that says they will put for you on the door, all you can eat. All you can eat, this means that maximization of satisfaction. From an Islamic perspective, we do not apply all you can eat, right? From the hadith, we know that if you have to eat, then 1/3 is for food, 1/3 is for water, 1/3 is for breathing, for your breath. Therefore, I don't apply all you can eat. To make it short and simple, if you arrive at the point where, at the point of your sustenance, not at the point of your full satisfaction from eating, then from that point of sustenance to the point of satisfaction, this is additional consumption, where if you can see the blue line, this has to continue. Whatever the amount of food that you have on the table, you will always be at your blue line. This is your level of sustenance. Therefore, the red line means that you are consuming more. As you consume more, what happens? Then your utility diminishes by time, right? It's like the law of diminishing return. It's the law of diminishing utility. Once you leave, you arrive at your full stomach, and then you start to eat. You arrive at your sustenance level. You eat more, and then utility starts to decrease until you arrive at the negative utility. It means you are consuming more money through the red line. Your utility is going less and less on the green line. And the difference between that could have gone simply to more saving. This difference between your sustenance level and your satisfaction level will go to your saving. And then your savings will be invested, and this investment will give you additional income. And then you will start here on the red line, you see where you will start paying zakat. Therefore, if we reflect these types of Sharia implications on our individual consumption, you will see how the graphs will look. And definitely, it is very different from the graphs that we see in the books of economics from a capitalist and a liberal market. Therefore, we present different type of theory that has a different result. And it's supposed to be that if we do actually apply that, it means that the Islamic society should be the highest society ever for investment, with the highest wealth, whether we are talking about economic wealth or material wealth. We will be the wealthiest nation ever, subject that if we apply the proper Sharia axioms and principles. If we don't, then we are just like any other economic theory. What is at the center of this Islamic paradigm? Human beings. The whole theory of economics from an Islamic perspective, man is at the center. Man is the unit that is the element of production, or the tool of production, if you wish. But at the same time, man is the aim from all economic activity. Therefore, if you have economic activity that does not arrive at the benefit of human being, then there's something wrong. It is not the proper activity that should be done. You should do something else, or you are doing it wrongly. All economic activity has to come to my benefit as an individual. Therefore, because Allah has created this human being and made it the highest ever value, and we participate in this economic activity, whether physically or mentally, and at the end, this economic activity must come back to our benefit. If it doesn't, then the activity is wrong. Therefore, what is my benefit? It means that I have proper feeding system, proper education, proper healthcare, my standard of living. This is why we call it economic sustainable growth, not just economic growth. Economic growth, it means that we have an increase in our economic wealth, but where was it generated? Maybe one economic sector had generated that. Maybe only the banking system had been making some additional revenue, and all the productive sectors are not actually well enough. Therefore, it doesn't reflect the truth about the well-being of the economic sectors. When we say economic sustainable growth, it means sustainable for human beings, that it provides education, healthcare, and a good standard of living, and sustainable because we have the responsibility to maintain these economic resources for the generations to come. Therefore, you cannot throw your waste in the sea or in the water and destroy the skies and the air pollution. And you see what all the climate change, it's because of our own doing. Therefore, it's not sustainable anymore. If from a Sharia perspective, yes, it's economic sustainable growth, not just economic growth. And when we say it's economic sustainable growth, human beings is at the core of this economic activity. Therefore, money is not your goal. We don't live for money. Money is a tool. Economic activity is the basis. This generates revenues and profits and additional economic wealth. Yes, no problem with that. But once you run after money, it becomes a different paradigm and a different theory. It means that an interest-based system will be more catching. Why? Because you just put your money and you get higher interest rates without doing anything. And money is generating more money. This is not from a Sharia perspective, it doesn't fly. Okay. Therefore, here, what happens? We have the macro and the micro levels, a governmental sector and a private sector. The government will put the economic policies, and the private sector, in fact, without being forced to do so, should try to implement their activities to serve these economic objectives. Therefore, if the government, for instance, puts a policy where it needs to encourage agriculture and industry, and then the private sector is investing in tourism and banking, it means each party is going to a different direction. In fact, they have to be homogeneous. And this is where the financial sector comes as the financial arm, the financing arm of economic activity. Therefore, they have to be in harmony and they have to be homogeneous. If this doesn't happen, also there is something wrong. The government have to take certain types of steps to encourage the private sector to go into the direction to apply its economic objectives, but without forcing. But yes, this is another possible area that needs a higher degree of coherence between these two sectors, government and the private sector. Okay, I'll go quickly through this. I'll try to be as swift as possible. After the 2008, you know what happened in 2008 financial crisis in the subprime liquidity crash. And then we had massive losses. And then there were a number of something like 20 or a bit more of economic intellectuals who came together in the United States, and they stayed in a certain environment for a couple of weeks, and they come they came out with a few pointers how to avoid financial crisis in the future. And in fact, what they came up with, when I was reading the article, it's not a very big article, by the way, but I did not read who the authors were, but I thought that this was an Islamic scholar who was writing that he's proposing the solution from Sharia, but it came up, no, these were scholars from different countries, basically Americans also, and they made this collective effort and they came up with this type of thought. Look what they say, I'll just go through very quickly. They said that we have an intellectual crisis, in fact, and they need a new quality of thinking that we share as human beings. Now, if you just look at without, I don't have to go through and explain each word by word, but once you read or hear this word, then it rings a bell that this is not the regular capitalist liberal economic thought that we live by and we hear. This is more related to Sharia, in fact. Look, he says we need collective attention, and compassion should be the basis for policy making. Individuals we need an evolution as consumers and citizens. Therefore, I'm not only a consumer, I'm a citizen, right? I'm a member, a citizen. It means you are a member of a nation, and you should not think and act as an individual separately from others. And we share as human beings. This is something new, because you see, in the United States, they have 10% of United States citizens are below poverty level. We are talking about 35 to 37 million individuals who are below poverty levels in the United States. And still they prefer to go to Mars. They prefer to spend trillions of dollars to go to Mars instead of saving these millions of people living on the streets. Property rights should not be addressed towards more privatization of the government. Now you can tell me who leads the political decision in the government. It's in fact the big MNCs, multinational corporations who have the higher financial capabilities. They are providing the support to those who apply their own interests. In fact, they are putting these policies. And there is no lack of supply. We always that on the supply and demand, right? Scarcity of resources. Therefore, he says there's no lack of supply, but in fact, oversupply of goods and services which do not respond to needs. This is not my saying, right? I said that one of our paradigms in Islamic economics is that we produce economic activities to produce products and services needed by society. Therefore, this is what he's saying. We have overproduction, but it doesn't respond to our needs. Those who suffer are the deprived, poor, and marginalized individuals that they don't have the financial capabilities. And leaving them to economic growth is not, I mean, if you hear these words here that they are saying, that we have to, how do we alleviate this suffering? By transferring a modest amount of wealth to this category. Does it mean zakat? I mean, does it ring a bell? Right? These are American high intellectual economic authors who are saying that, scholars. It's not the Sharia scholars from an Islamic country. Because most income is from sources other than work, it means the revenues are not generated from economic activity. It's only money generates more money, right? Interest-based type of transaction. This is what is increasing levels of poverty, underconsumption, and underemployment. Because if this money was put into production, then it means you need more labor. It means that they have income. It means that they can consume, and then the whole economic activity goes through into effect. But when the money goes into the financial market or it goes into interest-based banking. Money generates money, and then you don't have investment and the other resulting repercussions. Providing income, wealth, education, and work for these categories of society results in upgrading the status of the community. Income, health, education, and work. What we were talking about just a few slides back, a couple of slides back, we were talking about what? Sustainable economic growth. Income, health, education, and work. This is what we're talking about. Human right to basic income, based on the fact that humans are not separate from each other. This is human brotherhood. Money is not a commodity. Money has no value in itself, but has a value for the real economy it generates. Look, this is a very simple axiom. In all economic books in the whole world, you will have that money has the 3 or 4 basic functions, right? That it's medium of exchange, that it is the store of value, that is value for other commodities, and it's an accounting unit. And then the conclusion is that money is not a commodity. So I graduate from the university and I go out to work in a bank. What is the business of a bank? The bank accepts deposits from clients and it pays out interest, 4%, for instance, and lends this money back to other clients who are in need of cash and liquidity at 9%, for instance. Therefore, the bank will collect this 9%, pay the 4% to the other clients, and retain the difference, which is 5% to them as revenue. Now, what does that mean? We just said that money is not a commodity because it has no value or it has no benefit in itself, right? If you are hungry, you cannot just eat a few dollars or a few reals. You have to buy food. Therefore, it has no intrinsic benefit. Therefore, it's not a commodity. It cannot be bought or sold. But interest-based banks, what do? They buy money at 4%, they sell money at 9%, and they make the spread. And we just graduated from a university that says money is not a commodity, and we work in a bank where money is a commodity. Therefore, they preach something and they do something else. They practice something else. In fact, not something else, but the complete opposite. This is why the system will have its continuous crisis also. There should be no extraction and no pumping of cash into the economy, right? No extraction. This is what we call hoarding of money, iktinaz. No pumping when we have overprinting of this paper currency. This will go through. This will make excessive inflation. Investment should be based on low profit, high social return, and free giving capital. You know what he's talking about? This is musharaka. Musharaka, where you have high social return and everybody will come as a partner into your company. And definitely when you have a partnership company, it will cost you on your funding costs will be much lower than if you borrow money on an interest-based system. Therefore, this is when you say you have a very low cost. The capital will have no cost actually because somebody is your partner. If you generate profit, he will share. If you don't generate profit, there's nothing to pay. And this is good for the society because everybody will share in generating this product and services. And in fact, it will always be a low profit. It means that you are merciful with people. This is why you accept to have lower profit, not to hurt other people by generating a higher rate of income for yourself. Therefore, here, a spark of insight or inspiration shows itself. Here, in fact, I translated this to Sharia. Therefore, look what has happened. This is what they said after the 2008 crisis. Now, why did we arrive at the 2008 crisis? Because of these financial practices. Interest-bearing financing, leveraging investments, speculation, short selling, financial derivatives, options. If you have an idea on the financial market, you'll know that these are not the only types of dealings that are Sharia non-compliant, but there are others. But I put this as an example. Buying and selling of indexes, the sale of debt, forwards and futures, insurance, floating paper currencies, right? So when we have all these MBOs, MBSs, and the mortgage-based securities and the debt-based securities, and now we have cryptocurrencies. This is an additional item. These are all Sharia non-compliant items, and these were a number of the essential items why we had a crisis. Right. What happened after that? Once we had the 2008 crisis, what was the remedy? The Federal Reserve issued, and other countries in the world also, they followed. They have a number of steps. These are the remedies that were actually applied after the 2008 crash to stop the increasing crash and try to go through the healing process. First, they stopped short selling. You know, short selling is selling what you don't have, selling what you don't own. Therefore, actually, this is one of the type of system-generated orders where once you arrive at a certain price limit, then the system will generate the order to sell for a stop-loss order in the financial market. Therefore, they stopped short selling. The Federal Reserve, they issued these types of steps that had to be applied in the financial market. First, to stop short selling. Hold on the sale of debt was stopped. Sale of derivative instruments. You know, what did they call derivative instruments? Instruments of mass destruction, financial instruments of mass destruction. They had a continuous and gradual reduction in interest rate. If you remember that, interest rates were zero. Now, it doesn't mean that they have become an Islamic economics system because interest rates are zero. No, this is not the only. This is one item that will making interest zero is one item in our applications from a Sharia perspective. But if interest rates become zero, it doesn't mean that you have a Sharia guided system. But because of the financial state at that time, interest rates, it was evident that it had to be zero. And now what are interest rates still? It was 0.25, 0.5, something like that, right? In Japan, interest rates remained zero for more than 10 years. It doesn't mean that it had changed from a capitalist system to a Sharia-based system. But I'm telling you here that these are the indications that the Western capital liberal system by itself are applying now the Sharia-guided alternative. This is what Sharia says. And they are doing it not because Sharia says, because eventually they have to apply what Sharia says, because these are the two measures to prevent these types of financial and economic crises. Guarantee of client deposit with varying ranges of up to 100% in different countries, because client deposits were guaranteed for 10, 15, 20%, and then the government imposed and the Federal Reserve imposed that these guarantees were elevated until in certain countries it had to be 100% guaranteed to preserve the rights of depositors. In fact, in an Islamic bank, we consider that all the amounts deposited by clients as loans from these depositors to the bank, and the bank has to pay it back if it's in a current account. It has to be paid back in full, guaranteed, without any addition, whether it is profit or without any reduction if it is loss from the bank activity. Therefore, they are applying this by law. Watchguard on speculative trading. They put high restrictions on speculative trading. Speculation also is not permitted. Backup of equity of major financial institutions. You see, this is another contradiction where in capitalist liberal system, when you say that there's a high differentiation between the government or the public sector and the private sector, and there should be no role of intervention from government into the private sector. What happened here is that the American government, they directly participated in owning shares in big banks, and they became partners. Therefore, this governmental entity, this public sector, has defied the capitalist liberal theory, economic theory, and they became partners with the private sector, right? So this is contradictory to their economic theory. But here, this is requested because the cash was being hoarded outside the United States, and then the government has taxed all US companies who have cash stocked outside the United States. It has been taxed. Therefore, they had to bring it back. You know, hoarding of cash is Sharia non-compliant. Therefore, because of hoarding of cash, they pump their cash, the government that is, and then they penalize these companies for hoarding cash outside the United States. Therefore, what do I say here? What am I saying here is that these are some of these decisions and the steps that has been taken to remedy their crisis. But these were applied only on temporary basis for 5 or 6 months only. It was not a continuous type of a theory or a system to be applied all through. Because if they apply these rules always on continuous basis, you will not have a crisis again. But if you apply these rules, it means then you cannot generate rainfall profits for the private sector. Therefore, and since they too, who will come to the Federal Reserve or the Minister of Finance in the US, it will you will find somebody like an ex-CEO from a bank that who becomes the Federal Reserve, the head at the Federal Reserve. Or therefore, it means that these individuals move from the private sector into the government sector, and they always have to maintain their own interests. Therefore, you need more profits, you cannot apply these rules. But they apply it only to cover up for the crisis, try to hold on the crisis at a certain level and remedy this crisis. If it's applied always on a permanent basis, then you will not see the crisis. Even if a crisis happens, if the crisis happens, then the alterations will be very smooth. You will not have these ups and downs, right? It will be very smooth. Now, this is what Sharia says, and this is what they have done. Not because they applied it because they are Sharia guided, but by the intellectual effort of any human being, you will arrive at the point where these Sharia guided instructions will give you the best results in economic and in financial activities. Therefore, they have to come back to it, whether they like it or not, whether they know it is Sharia or not, because this is the best type of principles to apply on a permanent basis. They have to come back to it. Now, just last week, I was reading an article on the financial market. Now, we are not talking about trillions of dollars. We are talking about quadrillions of dollars. So imagine how much will be the size of the crisis that will happen in the future. And it will happen definitely because these were temporary applications. Once you alleviate them and go back to your old system, it's only a matter of time until we arrive at a new crash. And this new crash will even be greater with higher implications. What is our Islamic perspective on these financial transactions? This is what I've just said as a summary. It is equity-based. It is asset-based. We do not generate a bubble. Our feet are on a hard land, solid land. We deal in the real economy. We don't deal in a bubble economy. And this will lead to mild economic fluctuations, and we will not have these high-level economic crises. Now, these were some of the points that I like to present to you, and to arrive at the point where if these essential principles of economics and finance are applied, then yes, we can prevent this crisis, or at least this crisis will be very mild. And from a Sharia perspective, yes, finance and economics can be more productive with a higher value added. And this is our part where we present the Sharia guidelines to be effective to all humankind. Thank you for it, attention and listening, and I am open to receive any questions you have. So the floor is yours for discussion if you wish. I am here for you.
Thank you very much, Dr. ANWAR MISBAH, for this wonderful presentation on the topic, the role of Islamic economics in preventing economic and financial crisis. Now we can open the floor for discussion. Any questions or any ideas if our participants would like to share. We are ready to receive and will welcome any kind of questions or ideas from the participants. There is Alamin Yaqub, Brother Alamin. Thank you very much for providing us with this blessed lecture. Inshallah, the question: have Islamic funds, Japan, Euro value us, for example, outperformed the others through Islamic investment criteria to reduce this Islamic crisis? Dr. Anwar, can you see the questions in question and answer section?
Have Islamic funds value us, for example, outperform the other through? Yes, okay. If you are aware, I'm not specifically, he's talking about Japan. I'm more familiar with the American financial markets. We have in the New York Stock Exchange, you have what is called the Dow Jones Islamic, and there's the FTSE Islamic, and there are other Islamic indicators in international financial markets. And if you put these indicators in a row, in a table, and see the achievement during the past 5 to 10 years, then you can see that the Dow Jones Islamic, as an indicator, it has outperformed the Dow Jones International, the Dow Jones Industrial, the FTSE, and the S&P 500. And you can see that this Dow Jones Islamic is based on a Sharia filtering of investments of financial paper, and it will invest only in instruments that are subject to Sharia screening. And the performance has been for the continuous 7 years, 7 to 8 years, it always outperformed the other international indicators. This means this should be, and it is also guided by a Sharia supervisory board that overlooks the financial instruments and the results. And this will give us more trust and faith that, yes, if you apply Sharia guidelines, then this will give you a better financial result. Therefore, it's not only a theory, and it's a practice. In practice, this has been proven. And I'm not talking about the Sharia Islamic Index of Muscat or Dubai or any other Islamic country. And I'm talking about the Dow Jones Islamic in the New York Stock Exchange. And this should be a very solid event, and should give us a very also a higher degree of faith that even if we apply the Sharia guidelines, yes, we will have a higher level of financial gains and results. You may even, if you wish, I can add to that. If you compare the profitability rates of Islamic banks as compared to interest-based banks, especially in the Gulf area in Malaysia, you will see that their profitability rates are higher than the interest-based banking conventional system in general, because we are more economic linked and they are more money linked, and the difference is very clear. And still at that, if you make the comparison, you will see that the net result is higher than the interest-based banks.
Thank you, Doctor, for the clarification. There is another question. if you have already explained, what is your opinion on cryptocurrency? Is it possible
What's
to have
your
Islamic?
opinion on cryptocurrency?
I think Doctor already conducted a lecture
Yes.
on this topic,
Yeah.
and you can also refer to our YouTube channel, now the Lectures of Islami, and the lecture is there, a recorded lecture, and also Dr. Anwar, yeah, if you want to clarify more.
I'll just make 2 sentences regarding cryptocurrencies. First, that yes, I have conducted one lecture before. It was not a long time. I will conduct a more comprehensive lecture at the end of the month also regarding cryptocurrency, also in English language, but not at your site here, at a different site. But it will also be more comprehensive. And in short, once you need to approach cryptocurrency, you have to be very, very careful, because some Sharia scholars who I know and I respect, I highly respect them, but they are giving their Sharia compliance to cryptocurrency based on specific issues regarding dealing with currency. They are not taking it as a full comprehensive activity. Therefore, to issue a Sharia rule, whether it is accepted or not accepted, permitted or not permitted, you have to look at the picture in its totality. You cannot just take one item and base your Sharia-related decision on this one item. You have to be very comprehensive. Therefore, it is a very lengthy decision, but yet I'm still convinced that Sharia cryptocurrency, as it is issued and practiced currently, it's Sharia non-compliant. But this doesn't mean that we cannot have a Sharia compliant cryptocurrency. Yes, we can have a Sharia compliant cryptocurrency if it is issued by a governmental institution, regulatory institution, and if it maintains the Sharia framework and guidelines. This in short, yes, we can have it. But currently, as it is issued and practiced, no. You can look on the news on daily basis and you can see what's happening. It is a very long topic, so I'm not going to elaborate here.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for answering his question. And Khalid Sabir asks, how did Corona pandemic affect the international economy and how to overcome this? It's a general question.
Yeah, it's a very big question, in fact. How did it affect international economy? I mean, you just need to read the news or hear the news, watch the TV, and you can see what, I mean, the level of unemployment in the US that went up from 3.7% to 14% just in a couple of months, right? It was a disaster. And at the same time, what to do to overcome it? Look, if you come back to the points that I just mentioned in the beginning of my lecture now, that if we take this collectively and we talk in the sense of brotherhood of mankind, we are all in the same pot here. There hasn't been any country that was not hit by Corona, right? Therefore, now we are looking for a collective solution, and it has to be on a collective basis. We need collective type of intellectual activities to bring up a new plan to come out from it. Individually, each country will not be able to solve its problem alone. Therefore, here, if we apply the concept of brotherhood of mankind, and we come again, as they did after the 2008 crash, they came up with this committee of these 22 intellectuals from different countries, from Europe and the United States. Now we need to make a committee, maybe in the United Nations, where you have all the countries of the world there. And they have to be a collective intellectual exercise where we come up with definite steps to come out from this crisis, which is caused by the Corona. Is it possible? Yes, everything is possible. If you have the will, then we can do it. But also, this is a political decision. It has to be done. Somebody has to do it. Otherwise, you will see that the effects will continue to go through. It will take a very, very long time until we arrive at a solution on individual basis. It's a very big problem.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Yeah, there is another question from Abu Sharoni.
Okay, can robot have? Yes, of course. Look, my friend. Human beings are the highest ever value created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, if somebody used to work on a switchboard, on a telephone switchboard, right? Now everything is electronic. You don't need somebody pulling plugs and putting plugs. Does it mean that this person is not of use anymore? We have to throw him aside? No, this is not the case. Wherever you have technological advances, this means that a human being must be elevated to a higher level. It doesn't mean that we are alienating the human element outside of the economic activity because a robot has came in place. But this means, as a human being, now I have a job with a higher caliber and with a higher intellectual capabilities. Therefore, human beings must be diverted into new jobs and new employments where the robots cannot do. We are human beings. It is human beings who invented robots. Therefore, we are always at the highest superior level. Therefore, if robot comes in my place as an employee, it doesn't mean that I have to be thrown out of the economic institution. It means, as a human being, a robot or a machine has done the job. Now I have to do something at a higher level. This is, in fact, it should elevate the human being from the lower tier jobs to a higher tier jobs. But definitely it doesn't come automatically, because this needs a high degree of training for these individuals who are replaced by robots to be shifted to a new employment paradigm. Therefore, I would just like to confirm the idea that if robots and machines take the place of current jobs that are held by human beings, this doesn't mean that human beings are alienated, but this means that we have to elevate the human level, the human element to a new level at a higher caliber. And definitely it will be for more compensation and higher financial revenues. Therefore, it is part of the human intellect, and it's part of our society as a whole. Therefore, if you say that Islam will come to a clash with technology and science, no, my friend. It's just that we are lifting human beings to a higher level where robots can do what we are doing now. Therefore, we will do something more important than what robots can do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anwar. Now you can see someone raised hand, Mr. Mahmoud. Please welcome Mr. Mahmoud if you want to say something. Mr. Mahmoud, we switch on microphone for you. Mr. Mahmoud, are you with us? We do still have some times if anybody would like to ask or would like to add any more comment, ideas on preventing economics and financial crisis, and how to what should be the role of Islamic economics in preventing financial and economic crisis. If you would like to add any comment, any ideas, please welcome. This is an open discussion time.
Somebody is putting on the chat a question.
Okay, Doctor, yes.
It's on the definition of investment being a gift of capital. And this individual is saying, please shed more light on this, and how can people grow their sustenance then if it is treated as a gift? It is treated as a gift when you participate. Therefore, it's not a donation. Why do we say it's treated as a gift? Because you don't have pay interest to borrow money from a bank. Therefore, when a partner when an investor is interested in my company, then he will invest in my company and become a partner without my paying him anything. This is why I say that his capital is like a gift to me, as compared to paying interest for borrowing money from an interest-based bank. Therefore, he becomes a partner, he puts up a certain amount of capital, and this capital in my company becomes free money. Now, at the point of participating, but at the end of the financial year, what happens? If we have profits, then he will share in these profits. Therefore, this gift, in fact, is only a gift upon participating. But once the financial results come out and we have profits, then he's a shareholder, a participant. He will share in these profits, and then he will definitely generate financial income. And any company that does operate without profit, I mean, this is irrational, because you need profit, because profit provides for growth, development, and innovation. If you don't have profits, you will die out and move out from the market eventually. Therefore, you don't just put your capital for free. You will definitely make profits for it. And it's just that the beginning, when somebody participates as a shareholder in your company, you don't pay him to come in like you pay interest when you borrow money from an interest-based bank. Also, the additional question on a derivative, whether the halal or haram, it's a different question. That if a derivative is required to be backed by an underlying trade or treasury obligation, one needs to settle to make it eligible. And in areas where the government is the major supplier of FX, is it halal? Look, just by saying that if it is backed by an underlying trade or treasury obligation, it is not enough to give a decision. Therefore, usually a derivative, if you're talking about the conventional market, you know that it is Sharia non-compliant because it's based on Sharia non-compliant assets. But based on the question that you supplied, there's not enough information. If you're saying it's an underlying trade or treasury obligation, a trade or a treasury obligation is a financial asset. And since you're talking about an interest-based system, the question will be no. It will not be Sharia compliant. But I mean, it's not the proper answer at that point in time if you don't present the additional information to arrive at the proper answer. So I'm not indulging. Okay. This is the question, Richard.
From Sister Maimuna. Yes, please. Sister Maimuna, we switch our microphone for you.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله. Please, تفضل.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
Yes, we are hearing you. Yes, please.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, I think something wrong. Okay.
Yeah, she's out.
Any more question, please? Otherwise, we'll conclude the session. If you have more questions, please welcome. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. On behalf of Nadal Iqtisad al-Islami, Islamic Economics Association of Kuwait University, our gratitude and thanks especially go to our Dr. ANWAR MISBAH SOUBRA, our guest speaker today, for his wonderful presentation and explanation on the topics. And it was a wonderful presentation with resources, information, and also well explanation. So we really appreciate, Doctor, for your time and effort. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يتقبل من هذه الجهود المباركة وأن يجازيه عنا خيرا. We also like to thank our participants from around the world who joined us and shared and benefited, we believe. We thank you very much for your time as well. And lastly, we thank our management board and members of Nadal Iqtisad Al-Islami, especially our Dr. Ala Al-Ubaid, who is the Director General of the association, and faculty of Sharia faculty, Kuwait University. And Dr. Anwar, please, your concluding remarks as advice for students and new researchers who join us today. Please welcome.
Thank you very much again for inviting me to this event. And I hope that the information I proposed was useful. And I sincerely advise for all participants to have some of the readings on Islamics on economics from an Islamic perspective. You have a lot of free information on the Google, and you can benefit out of it at your free time, because the collective type of intellectual activities of all these individuals will make a difference. So I hope that as time goes through, we can elevate the intellectual standards of economics from Islamic perspective. Maybe we can arrive at it in the near future. Thank you very much.
Most welcome, Doctor. And we thank you very much as well. With that, we would like to conclude our today's session here and see you in other sessions. As you know, we do have every day our programs under this Nadal Iqtisad Al-Islami. So to follow our schedule, our programs and events, you may visit our website, www.sharia.org, or you may visit our official Facebook page with the name of Nadal Iqtisad Al-Islami, and also you may visit our Twitter, and you may also join our groups in WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups. So you may know many more about our events, activities of the association. So see you soon again in other events and programs, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.